Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to cover chapter 11 of this manhwa. Let's dive into it. The chapter kicks off exactly where the chaotic cliffhanger left us, with the wild-haired Grandmaster brother screaming that he wants to violently adopt Jo Hwi right on the spot. For a split second, Jo Hwi's inner corporate manager starts calculating the sheer business metrics of this offer. He thinks to himself that if he changes his surname to Namgung, there would literally be no trade deal or business venture he couldn't pull off in the region. It would be an absolute financial blessing. Before he can give in to the temptation, the ghost of the sword god flares up inside the heavenly blood jade in pure rage. The ancient spirit angrily screams inside Jo Hwi's mind, calling him a complete imbecile for allowing himself to be enticed by a random clan surname. The ghost fiercely warns Jo Hwi that he is acting like a ridiculous fool who wants to die an early death, threatening to forcefully possess his body again right then and there. But while Jo Hwi is busy having an internal crisis, someone else decides to throw away their dignity completely. With a loud thud, Jo Hwi's older brother, Jo Hwi, drops straight to his knees, sliding across the floor in a desperate full-body kowtow. Sweat pouring down his face, Jo Hwi loudly yells, "Jo Hwi, no, Namgung Hwi greets you for the first time. Please give me the surname of Namgung as well. I will become the ultimate sword of the clan and follow all your orders for the rest of my life. I beg of you, please." Inside the jade, the ancient spirits are absolutely disgusted. They groan in sheer horror, asking if anyone has ever seen a more unsightly brat in their entire lives, completely appalled that this shameless gold digger is somehow the Jo clan's eldest son. The Grandmaster brother looks down at the groveling Jo Hwi with a deeply judgmental expression. He dryly notes that while Jo Hwi isn't entirely terrible, he's not convinced the boy has any real strength. He casually rejects him, stating that people of Jo Hwi's basic caliber are already a dime a dozen inside the clan, so there's absolutely no need for him. Despite the brutal rejection, a desperate Jo Hwi keeps his face glued to the floor, crying out that he will still do his absolute best. Watching his brother completely embarrass the family, Jo Hwi sighs deeply and shakes his head. He uses this chaotic distraction to gracefully turn down the adoption offer. Placing a hand over his chest, Jo Hwi declares that he could never dare to change the sacred surname his ancestors gave him so easily, politely asking the elders to pardon his refusal. The wild-haired Grandmaster tusks loudly, complaining about why youngsters these days are so incredibly full of themselves. Inside the jade, the great scholar spirit agrees, muttering that the boy's stubbornness is precisely what he was talking about. The Grandmaster brother laments that letting go of the best prodigy he has seen in 500 years is a massive waste. Knowing Jo Hwi would also reject joining a branch family since it requires a name change, the old man claps his hands as a brilliant alternative strikes him. Why not become an indirect disciple instead? An indirect disciple functions similarly to secular students of major groups. The clan can teach them almost anything excluding their top-secret traditional family techniques, forming a highly respected mentor and student relationship without altering any family bloodlines. Jo Hwi realizes he desperately needs the Namgung clan's local cooperation for his business, so he quickly asks his ancestors if this is acceptable. Another fierce spirit manifests, dryly noting that while the Namgung clan was absolutely nothing special back in his day, they have clearly made a massive name for themselves now. Finding no issues with the arrangement, the spirit gives his blessing. With the deal locked in, Jo Hwi drops to his knees and formally bows, declaring, "I, disciple Jo Hwi, offer my greetings to my master." The Grandmaster accepts the bow, immediately laying down 3 absolute corporate-style rules. First, he must never tarnish the prestigious name of the Namgung clan. Secondly, he must never turn a blind eye if the clan falls into direct danger. Thirdly, whenever the clan issues a formal summons, he must adhere to it without fail. Jo Hwi solemnly swears to all 3 conditions and the master commands him to rise. The moment Jo Hwi stands up, the atmosphere in the room grows incredibly tense. The master's welcoming smile instantly vanishes, replaced by a sharp, piercing glare. He demands that Jo Hwi answer him honestly. Where on earth did he learn his incredible techniques without belonging to an established martial clan? Jo Hwi stammers, trying to think of a quick excuse, but the Grandmaster fiercely cuts him off, warning him not to even think about lying. He explains that the only reason they were initially convinced he didn't belong to a clan is because his physical body is completely void of any practical combat experience or muscle memory. Jo Hwi panics internally, silently begging the sword god for a script to follow. The other Grandmaster brother chimes in, asking if Jo Hwi perhaps consumed some sort of miraculous heavenly herb or legendary elixir. But he quickly reasons that even if a novice stumbles upon an elixir, it is borderline impossible to utilize its ki efficiently without guidance. The sheer volume of raw inner ki circulating inside Jo Hwi strongly proves that a massive, hidden powerhouse faction must be backing him. They point out that just by perfectly controlling the elixir's key, he managed to forcefully unblock all of his meridians. A miraculous feat that is technically impossible unless he secretly utilized a high-level manual from their own clan. The master strokes his chin, deeply puzzled. He notes that Jo Hwi hasn't even nailed down the absolute basics of movement, yet he somehow commands a godly art. He tells the boy that he is truly a walking cluster of dangerous mysteries. Jo Hwi swallows hard, realizing these old geezers are far too sharp to fall for a basic lie, creating a massive corporate dilemma since he obviously can't reveal the literal ghosts living inside his necklace. Suddenly, a powerful surge of purple spiritual energy erupts within the jade. The ghost of the sword god angrily wakes up, scoffing at how these young brats dare to try and outsmart his descendant with their puny brains. Jo Hwi is relieved to hear his voice, asking if the spirit is all right. The sword god confirms he just needed to rest after spending too much power, and immediately dictates a flawless cover story. He reminds Jo Hwi that since he never left behind any physical children in the mortal world, Jo Hwi cannot claim a bloodline clan. Instead, he instructs him to tell the elders that he obtained his raw power and knowledge directly from the records of a long-lost hidden expert. Following the script perfectly, Jo Hwi looks the elders in the eye and explains that he simply encountered the legacy of a hidden expert. He adds that while his own ancestors' historical techniques are undoubtedly great, they were far too complex for his current understanding, which is why he hasn't yet studied the baseline fundamentals. The master's eyebrows twitch in pure annoyance. He glares at Jo Hwi and barks that the brat has clearly read far too many fictional storybooks. He furiously yells, "Are you seriously telling me to believe what you say? Which mythical cave is it then? Lead the way right now, I'll go learn some cave martial arts too." Jo Hwi keeps his composure, calmly apologizing and insisting it is the absolute truth. The master grows even more furious but then pauses, realizing something. He asks if the legendary fundamentals Jo Hwi claims to have read are actively stored inside his memories right now. When Jo Hwi nods, the master commands him to demonstrate it on the spot. Jo Hwi hesitates, muttering that his physical skills are still severely lacking, which only makes the master roar that he is a liar. The master aggressively rants that martial arts is not a joke, and that inheriting god-tier combat abilities through a single sheet of paper is a complete myth made up by street storytellers. He argues that if passing down legendary ki was that simple, powerful martial arts, clans wouldn't need to exist at all. Jo Hwi tries to counter, asking if the famous Shaolin temple doesn't store sacred records for that exact purpose. The master scoffs, explaining that no matter how detailed a sacred record's documentation of genuine inner ki is, it can never be truly weaponized or used to enter the elite state of acceleration without the living teachings of a master. Inside the jade, the sword god grows incredibly bored of the old man's lecturing, muttering about why this guy talks so much when the solution is simple. He instructs Jo Hwi to immediately shut the old man up by proposing a verbal martial arts match. The spirit notes that if Jo Hwi wants to successfully fool masters of their grandmaster caliber, he needs to deliver a demonstration grand enough to fully persuade them. Stepping forward with absolute confidence, Jo Hwi challenges his new master by saying, "If master really cannot believe his disciple, then please spar with me using verbal martial arts." The master narrows his eyes, completely taken aback, asking if a total novice like him even understands the complex swordsmanship formulas of his own supposed lineage. Jo Hwi smoothly replies that since master doesn't know his specific style either, he will be utilizing his core style, the unifying power, endangering sword paired with the complex 7-step footwork. To make the verbal simulation completely fair, he suggests they both limit their extreme techniques to a simulated 10 years of inner ki strength each. Amused by the kid's sheer audacity, the master chuckles and agrees, vowing to fight using the exact same simulated style restrictions. He tells Jo Hwi he will grant him the advantage of the first move, urging him to show off these mythical paper-learned skills. The verbal match begins instantly, transitioning the room into a tense, calculated mental battlefield. Jo Hwi calls out his opening play. In one swift, seamless motion, he aims a direct strike straight for his master's torso. The master counters instantly out loud. "After perfectly dodging your blade using the 7-step footwork's bite technique, I shall counterattack your midsection using my great dragon strike." Without a single second of hesitation, Jo Hwi calls out his defense, stating that he utilizes the 7-step footwork's deflect technique to cleanly block the master's incoming attack. He then shifts the mental simulation, declaring that he deploys an inner attack technique to swiftly penetrate to the right, aiming directly for the master's critical key center and governing vessels. The master opens his mouth to counter, but suddenly stops mid-sentence, his face freezing as he mentally visualizes the position. He realizes something is deeply wrong. In standard martial logic, the most basic combination technique of the three powers sword is Incheon Form 2 followed immediately by Seuncheon Form 1. But Jo Hwi's called positioning has completely broken that predictable flow. The master calculates the mental board. If he tries to verbally dodge backwards right now, he will step directly into a devastating simulated ascension strike. Realizing he's been trapped, the master mentally decides to give up dodging to the rear entirely, choosing to take a simulated minor hit to his position instead. He focuses entirely on digging back in with his own inner attacks, verbally declaring that he blocks Jo Hwi's right side before using a sudden strike to aim directly at his key channels. Jo Hwi counters the play flawlessly, stating that he elevates his simulated 10 years of ki to the absolute extreme, utilizing the 7-step footwork's hill technique to endure the pressure. Then with a sharp grin, Jo Hwi delivers his counterplay. Using a swift counter dodge, he aims a lethal simulated finishing strike straight for his master's neck. The master laughs out loud, thrilled by the aggression, shouting that the kid is finally starting to attack properly. He calls out that he will also elevate his simulated 10 years of strength to the extreme, deploying the 7-step footwork's luck technique to dodge the blade. But mid-declaration, the master's eyes bulge in pure shock as the mental math catches up to him. He freezes, internally screaming that this isn't right. He realizes that Jo Hwi didn't just throw a singular attack. The boy is manipulating his inner ki to alter his called techniques in rapid succession, stacking up to 3 entirely different moves in a single verbal breath. The master realizes he can no longer just focus on basic singular counters. He has to completely overhaul his strategy to account for rapid, fluid technique transitions. Sweat dripping down his neck, the master frantically tries to backtrack, yelling out that he cancels his previously called luck technique and wants to use an escape technique to dodge backwards instead. Jo Hwi instantly calls him out on the blunder, looking at him with a deadpan expression. He asks his master if verbal martial arts is a joke to him, firmly reminding him of the absolute rules of engagement. In a real battle, an opponent would never let you magically rewind time, meaning you absolutely cannot stop a martial arts technique in the middle of using it. Blushing in sheer embarrassment, the old master is forced to stick to his flawed luck technique to dodge left. He frantically tries to patch his defense, verbally chaining a great dragon strike to his torso, an inner attack technique, and an ice dusk form to regain control. But Jo Hwi is already 10 steps ahead, his mind completely piloted by the supreme combat foresight of the sword god. Jo Hwi delivers the final, decisive sequence out loud. I will use my extreme technique to unleash the centipede attack as I perfectly predict the movements of Master's lower body. And then I will deploy the ascension strike to cleanly cut Master down. The room falls into a dead, breathless silence. The Master's Grandmaster brother stands in absolute paralyzed disbelief. He looks at his sibling, internally screaming that it's impossible. His brother, who is widely revered across the region as a legendary heavenly swordsman, was just utterly and completely defeated in a verbal match of pure strategy in a mere 4 strikes. Jo Hwi didn't win through luck. He took calculated advantage of a microscopic opening and used flawless foresight to unleash the final blow without a single fraction of hesitation. The defeated master forces a loud, trembling laugh, sweating profusely as he admits he totally let his guard down by exerting his inner ki far too late. Shaking with a mix of excitement and bruised pride, he wiggles his finger and desperately asks Jo Hwi if they can please do just one more round so he can see more of his skills. Jo Hwi agrees but firmly requests that this time, the master must give it his absolute all, treating the verbal match exactly like a life-or-death fight. The master eagerly accepts, promising he won't let the boy off easy this time and granting him the first move again. The second verbal match begins, and it results in an absolute, unmitigated slaughter. The Grandmaster brother watches the mental exchange play out, noting in pure horror that even though his older brother fought with 100% of his serious tactical capability as if it were a real battle, he was still verbally executed in just 9 strikes. The master is left completely breathless, ecstatically cheering at how exquisite the boy's final, new path technique was before frantically begging for a 3rd round. Determined to save his own ego, the master realizes that letting Jo Hwi take the first move is putting him at an extreme disadvantage. So throwing away the last of his pride, he demands to take the first move for the 3rd round. Jo Hwi casually shrugs and allows it. It doesn't change a single thing. The 3rd round ends even faster, with the master choking out a painful groan as Jo Hwi verbally dismantles his opening play in a mere 5 strikes. The chapter fast-forwards through a brutal montage of pure intellectual dominance. By the end of the evening, the legendary Grandmaster is slumped over a table, completely broken and traumatized. muttering to himself in absolute despair that he must be having a nightmare because he just suffered 13 consecutive verbal losses to a 20-year-old kid. His grandmaster brother walks over, dryly telling him to just give up because he clearly isn't familiar with the unique mechanics of the endangering sword style. The master angrily snaps back, telling him to shut up. He looks up at Jo Hwi with deep, profound respect, assuming the boy must have studied the sacred records of the endangering sword until absolute physical exhaustion. He dramatically drops to his knees, begging Jo Hwi to give him at least 2 weeks of time to study the style's fundamentals so they can have a truly fair verbal rematch. Jo Hwi stands tall, looking down at the desperate grandmaster with a sharp, victorious corporate smile, and asks the ultimate question. Then what are you offering in exchange? The chapter ends on a brilliant, triumphant note. Floating right behind Jo Hwi, the glorious aura of the sword god manifests, smiling with absolute amusement. The spirit looks at the completely oblivious grandmasters and chuckles to himself, wondering what kind of utterly hysterical faces these top-tier elders would make if they ever found out that the paper-learned novice they were desperately begging for a rematch was actually the legendary sword god himself. Talk about an absolute psychological dismantling. Jo Hwi didn't even have to draw a real blade to completely break a legendary heavenly swordsman, handing his own new master a soul-crushing 13 consecutive losses in a pure battle of words. He walked into that room as a suspected fraud, and left it with a grandmaster literally dropping to his knees to beg a 20-year-old kid for a 2-week grace period just to study the mechanics of his sword style. How will our modern corporate strategist capitalize on this massive leverage now that he has the grandmasters completely wrapped around his finger? Will Jo Hwi manage to secure his ultimate business empire during this 2-week truce? Or will the ancient spirit of the sword god get bored and push him into even more dangerous territory? Drop your absolute best theories in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed this deep dive explanation, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss chapter 12. See you in the next one, legends. Bye-bye.